Welcome to the Radical Lifestyle Podcast, brought to you by Generation to Generation, where you'll be inspired by the past, equipped for the present, and prepared for the future as we engage in conversations with people from around the world. If you've been inspired by the guests that we've had on the podcast, please like, subscribe, comment, hit notification bells, whatever you can do on the platforms that you're listening on, so that more people have the opportunity of hearing these and engaging in our community. Hi everyone, this is Andrew and Daphne. Our guests today are Cari, Alexander and Shannan Labrador. Now, for people that don't know who you are, could you just say a bit about where you're from and what you do? I know that could be a little tricky for you, Shannan, but if you start, and then we can move to Cari.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you guys so much, and to Generation for allowing us the privilege to be on your podcast. My name is Shannan Labrador. I've been married for 30 years to an amazing man named Javier. And about 14 years ago, we started a nonprofit ministry called 24/7 Marriage, and now has become a national ministry. And we travel the United States teaching boot camps and workshops to married couples all over the United States. We believe that we are contending and fighting for the nuclear family in a culture set against destroying it. So that is our mandate that has been put on us. It's no easy task, but we are up for the job. And I had just finished coming off a 3-day marriage intensive, and nothing short of a miracle of what God was doing in the 12 lives of the couples that came, and just seeing restoration and redemption happen, and know that they're going to go home and put those tools to work. So I'm excited to be sharing part of our story with you also, because part of my marriage story does have to do with Cari. So I'm sure we'll dive into that more here in just a bit.
Yeah, before we get to that, Cari, can you tell us a bit about where you are and what you do?
Yeah, I'm Cari. I am currently in Arizona. My husband and I have been here for almost 10 years. We are attempting to raise and keep alive 4 children. And we are very, very fortunate that we are blessed with 4 kids that we can raise up and, raise to be disciples and go out into the world. Not to give too much away, but I've been in the health, wellness, and beauty industry for almost 15 years now. And that's something that Shannan and I have in common that has kind of led us to this point.
Okay, and then for people that listen to this, they want to find out more about you both, what you're doing, where can you do that? And Shannan, we're going to have you and your husband on another time to talk more specifically about the marriage stuff that you do, but share that link as well, because I may be interested in checking out both things.
Yeah, Cari, you want to tell them?
Yeah, so you can find Shannan and I on Instagram at chapter3beauty co, or chapter3beauty.com.
Okay, and then Shannan, your marriage website, where can they find that as well?
At the numbers 247 Marriage. We're on all social media platforms. It's the same handle name, so it's at 247 Marriage.
Okay, and I'll put all those links in the description box. So if you're listening or watching this, they're there ready for you to go and check out. Okay, let's start with you, Shannan. You start this story. Maybe could you just share a bit about how you know Cari? I
would love to tell you how I came to meet her. So the year was 1989. I was a freshman in high school. Grew up in a Christian family. Went to church every Sunday, every Wednesday, and set my sights on a boy, and got a little too close to the fire, and discovered in February of 1989 that I was pregnant. Scared out of my mind, not sure what to do. I was at a health clinic that was by our government library and everything. And I decided to get an abortion. So I scheduled the abortion in the San Fernando Valley in Southern California. And at 15, I did not have the money to pay for an abortion. I asked my older brother if he would loan me the money, and he refused. Then that made me miss my abortion appointment. So I missed that appointment, and within 24 hours, I found myself in a crisis pregnancy center, which in the States are called CPCs. They're faith-based, usually supported solely by churches and individuals who are pro-life. And it was there that I saw the modules of a fetus all the way from 2 weeks to 9 months. So I kind of calculated in my head how far along I might be. And I kind of put my finger on that module, and I realized this is a life. This is a life that is not for me to decide whether or not it should live or die. And I walked out of that office determined to carry this baby to term. Not sure what I was going to do after, but I did make a decision that I was not going to terminate this pregnancy, that I would carry her to term. And in November of 1989, Cari came 2 weeks late, 2 weeks after her due date, and 22 hours of really hard labor at 15 kind of scared the soup out of me. And she came into the world, and I had an older cousin at the time who was married, had 2 small children. They love the Lord, been walking with the Lord, and they said, we would love to adopt Cari. And for me, that just gave me the peace of mind that I needed, because I just knew at 15, I wasn't ready to give her what I thought she needed. And what I wanted for her was to have a mom and a dad that were able to love and nurture her the way that she deserved. So they were able to provide that for us. So our family tree is a little bit like this, and that's okay. That's the way we like it. It kind of matches our personality. We're a little quirky and weird. But she was adopted right away. She went home probably within 24 or 48 hours after she was born. And our families have been very close and intertwined. I got to see Cari grow up. When she was about 17 years, well, let me back up. When she was about 11, 12 years old, she was trying to search on the internet for who her mom might be. So at that time, my cousin Jenny and Gary made the decision to tell her what the story was, who her birth mom was. And of course, Cari was very excited because it was her favorite cousin. And so we told her, and when Cari was about 17, she came to live with Javier and I, and we had 2 small girls at the time. And it was really, as Cari would say, it wasn't to get away from home or to get away from mom and dad. It was nothing like that. It had a lot to do with maybe exploring a new city and seeing what else was out there, and maybe a boy next door that lived next to us that she had her sights set on a little bit. So she lived with us, and shortly after that, she met the love of her life. Javier and I had the privilege of doing Cari and Sean's premarital. Javier married them. I got to be her maid of honor. My girls were in her wedding as well. Our story is not typical. I know of a lot of inter-family adoptions that just don't go well, that maybe don't have happy endings. But I think for us, we offer each other a lot of grace, and we know that we're not perfect. We're flawed people. but we make it work. And I think that's the beauty in God showing up in your story, is that all these things that happen to us, but God, and there's always that, but God. And, so that's just our story in like a nutshell. And you feel free to ask any questions you want. Cari and I are an open book. No pun intended, but we are.
I wanted to just come back to a very small thing you said in there, but it's a very weighty thing. You going to your brother. How old was he when you went to him to ask him to pay for that?
21. So he's 6 years older than me.
21.
And he loves the Lord, has always walked with the Lord. And he just put his foot down and he was like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I give him a lot of credit for why Cari is here. For him standing for what was right, even though he loved me and would do anything and would have helped me. He was like, absolutely not. I'm taking you home. We're going to tell mom and dad exactly what's going on.
And then how did that impact your relationship with him at the time? Did that really rock things? Did you trust him that he would help you figure it out?
No, I knew enough that I knew what he was doing was the right thing, because what I was trying to do was hide and conceal. I really wanted to just terminate the pregnancy and have my mom and dad never find out and just kind of go about my life and just pretend like this never happened. That was my goal.
So I was going to say, Cari, how did you meet Shannan then? We've done how Shannan met you. Let's do it the other way around.
So just to connect a few dots, Shannan's mom and my mom who adopted me, her mom, they're sisters. And there's 3 sisters, and we were all really close with our great-grandparents. And, well, Shannan's grandparents and my mom's grandparents, they were my great. And we had a pretty close family. And so looking back at old photos, we celebrated Christmas and Thanksgiving together, and we'd all go to the summer to my grandma's beach house. And so I always grew up knowing Shannan and her husband, Javier, and my cousin, Shannan's brother. And so there was never like any, how to explain it? It's not like just one day they were like, oh, this is your biological mom. So I'd always known her. So when my parents did sit down and tell me, because I did start searching, I think they were concerned that I wasn't processing, because for me, it was, oh, this is my biological mom, but I already know her. I've grown up with her and she's my cousin. And I already have a mom and dad. So for me, it was almost like finding out who my biological parents were. It kind of took away like this mystery behind it of, who could they be? And I was pretty unfazed by it. And my parents were convinced I needed just time to process. But for me, it was like, oh, I already know her. She's great. We get along great. She's kind of like an older sister. Cool. And so we just kind of carried on life like normal. I didn't just start calling her mom one day. She was still cousin Shannan. Nothing really changed other than I think
that you knew.
Other than it was like, okay, well, this is where I get my laugh. This is where I get my sense of humor. This is where I get my music taste. It's like we're so similar. And so when we look back at those photo albums, Shannan, and my mom has reiterated this, Shannan never made an attempt to like zone in on me as soon as we got there or spend time just me the whole time for Christmas break. Everyone says I was the one who gravitated to Shannan. I was the one who would always like seek her out. And so there's definitely that undeniable bond that's there. But for us, it just never flipped to mother-daughter, because for me, I had a really great mom and dad. And it was more of just like I said, like a big sister. We're so similar, to the point where we joke that we're twins, because you know how twins kind of have that connection. So for me, it wasn't the mother-daughter.
Half a brain.
Yeah. And so it was kind of fun having this, oh, okay, Well, that's why I like her so much. She birthed me.
She birthed me. The interesting thing is, after Cari knew, life was so normal for us and our relationship that I don't know if it bothered other family members, but they had adverse reactions to the point where I was like, can we just move on? Like, it is what it is. Yes, we're related. Yes, she's my daughter. Like, moving on. Like, there's the turkey's out. Let's get some stuffing. We're hungry. Stop talking about it. So Cari and I just carry on our life as normal with our family, knowing this thing about us that we're connected. But for some other family members, they just kind of were always like, kind of like if you were to go to a circus and see, the big spectacle of the bearded ladies or the 29 clowns getting out of a car. I feel like every time family members were around us, they were just always like, oh, it's Shannan and Cari. And it's like, calm down. Like, we're just people. We have a story and this is what it is. But Cari and I are also very grounded in our lives and in God. So we didn't feel the need to have to run to each other for something because we're grounded. She's grounded with who her mom and dad are and who her identity in Christ is. And I can say the same for me. So when we were together, we just enjoyed our time together. And still do. And it is like I gave birth to my younger sister. It's very strange.
Of course, for other people.
Sorry, go ahead.
So for other people, you have to you want a frame to put things in. If somebody says something, you automatically put it in a frame that you can connect with, that it belongs in. And suppose for most of them, there wasn't a frame to put this in. So they were left trying to figure out, well, how am I going to frame this? What does the frame look like? Whereas if I say, Andrew's my son, you immediately have a frame. You say, well, that's how that fits. But they didn't have that. Would I be right? Would that sum it up quite well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also think that there's a degree of there wasn't enough. I think they were expecting some type of conflict to come from it. Maybe that's just from past experience with other family conflicts. I think they were waiting for
the drama.
Or something dramatic to happen. And so it's like it's almost like they were always waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like, okay, Cari knows now, but when's it going to hit the fan? And it almost, correct me if I'm wrong, Shannan, it almost felt like a lot of family members tried to stir the pot. Yeah. And create problems that weren't there between me, you, and my mom and dad.
Yeah.
So how many within the family then really knew? I mean, presumably the older generations, obviously, but at what point did people just not know?
So the younger generation would have been Shannan and Javi's daughters. And so from a pretty young age, they told them, because I was the last of my generation of grandkids until Shannan had her daughters. So my older brother and sister, I think my sister knew because she's about 5 years older than I am. So I think she knew. And then my brother probably found out at probably the same time I did. And then Michaela and McKenna, Shannan and Javi's daughters, they obviously weren't born until later. So they were kind of the last to know, if you will, from my generation of the cousins and grandkids.
Shannan, were there ever times as Cari was growing up that you thought, man, I just want to let the cat out of the bag. Like maybe she did something when she's a bit older, like you were super proud of her and what she'd done, and you were like, and by the way, I'm your biological mum. Like, was there ever a temptation to say, like, just let the cat out of the bag?
Oh, for sure. I had those. Yeah, I for sure had those feelings. I just knew that it wasn't my decision to make, because I had relinquished that responsibility to Jenny and Gary. So it was, for sure, looking back, I know that I had those feelings of angst or whatever. But quite honestly, with so many adoptions being closed or birth parents not knowing, is my child alive? Have they passed on? Is something tragic happened to them? Are they happy? Are they succeeding? For me, I literally was so happy to just be able to look through a window at a holiday, a birthday party, a summer event, and just go, she's doing great. Like, she's healthy. She's running around. She has siblings. She's laughing. She's growing. She's playing sports. Like, it was so good to have that, because for so many birth parents, you don't have that contact unless you have an open adoption and you do have a family that is willing to contact you or send you photos and keep you updated. So for me, you know, this was back in 1989, the early 90s. It was nice to, it just gave my heart peace of mind to just know that she was growing and healthy and hitting all the milestones and living a great carefree child like every child should live.
So, Cari, your parents must be pretty amazing, because this was their story too, and they were living through all the dynamics and knowing the story and et cetera. When you look back now, and you're a parent yourself, and you look at it somewhat through their eyes, what do you think they would say today? They're probably listening and probably saying, actually, we could speak for ourselves, but they're not here, so can you give them a voice?
Yeah, it's funny. I actually made an Instagram reel about this because it's something that kind of just sat on my heart for a while. That it's something I hadn't really reconciled, was that when Shannan got pregnant with me, my parents had only been married for 3.5, 4 years. Yeah. And they had like a 3-year-old and an 18-month-old. They were this very newly married, young children couple. And it's funny because, like, when you look at your parents, you look back and you just remember them always as a unified team. And it just kind of felt like they were always that stable. And it wasn't until recently that I really thought about the fact that there's no way, when I was married 4 years with 2 small children as well, that I would have been, yeah, I'll adopt another baby. Sure. And so, yeah, so I actually made a video about that because it's just something that really kind of, now that I'm married and a parent, I resonate with. And I just think of like the sacrifice they made, knowing that, not that Shannan would be critical, but they're adopting this baby from within the family. And it's almost going to feel like everyone's always watching them. They all know that they adopted the baby. Everyone knows that they're not the parents. They're always going to have eyes on them. And they handled it with so much grace, not just from Shannan and her family, but also my biological dad's family. I grew up knowing everybody, and nobody ever during that time, until they told me, intervened inappropriately. But I grew up knowing everybody, and my parents welcomed this other family into our home multiple times over the course of 15, 18 years. And I just think of how selfless they are. And I know what my parents would say, specifically my dad. He would say we do it all over again, even through some of the messy parts, navigating, Cari knows now, and some people kind of wanting the family tree to change, because some aunts became grandparents because of adoption and vice versa. They navigated it all with so much grace. They never got hateful. They never were angry about anything. And it's funny. It's almost like after I found out, my parents and Shannan and Javi's relationship grew even stronger. It was a really unique bond that occurred after I found out when I was about 12. But yeah, without a doubt, they'd say they do it all over again. And I mean, not to toot my own horn, but they always say, like, our family wouldn't be the same without you. You were kind of the missing piece we needed. But they're amazing. I love them so much.
And your biological dad,
Yeah.
was that, Shannan, did you kind of keep contact there, or was that a situation where you did have to actually try and track him down and find him?
No, it was, I got pregnant the very first time I ever had sex. So one and done. And, we told his parents, they actually didn't want me to place Cari for adoption. So they did give, us a lot of trouble in the beginning. As soon as I found out I was pregnant, I ended that relationship and just kind of went back to being home with mom and dad and taking care of me and my body. Because for me, getting pregnant was, in my faith, was a huge misstep. Like I had done the deed, I had sinned, and I needed to find my way back to God and get back to where I needed to be. So, I've had very little contact, over the years, with him. I think the last time I saw him in person was at Cari's wedding, which was 10 years ago, briefly. But other than that, yeah.
So how did you then end up in touch with your biological dad?
So like I said, I grew up always knowing this family that was a family friend that everybody else on my mom's side of the family also knew. And so after I was adopted, Shannan is correct. They actually wanted to keep me in their custody. And so that may have been a factor as to why they wanted to stay so involved. But a couple of times a year, this wonderful family would come visit us. I grew up in Northern California, about 4 hours north of Shannan, and my biological dad, Mike, they both lived in Santa Clarita. And every twice a year, 3 times a year, this family would come visit, or we would go down to visit my grandparents and my aunts and uncles. We would also see this other family. And I thought they were just, a close friend of the family because Shannan's parents knew them and my grandparents, everybody knew them. And so again, if I bring out the old photo albums, they're in a lot of them. And they were really, really good to not just me, but also my older siblings. Every holiday, there was a card for all of us. Every birthday, everybody in my family got a card from them. So they were incredibly generous. They were incredibly gracious to us. So I always knew them. So again, when my parents sat me down and said, these are your biological parents, it was kind of like, oh, I know both of them already.
So when you... Sorry?
No, that's it.
Oh, so when you were told about them being your biological parents, and Shannan has some kids, you hear about these stories where someone who's been adopted, they connect with their biological parents, and then they struggle with, wait, you've got kids, why give me up, why keep them, Did you struggle with any of those thoughts?
No. And so this is what Shannon means by, her and I both know a lot of adoption stories that just don't sound like ours. Shannon and I are both very black and white. There have been times where it gets really frustrating when people keep saying, "Oh, your mom, your mom, your mom." She's not my mom. She carried me in her belly. And this guy was a sperm donor. Like, yes, they created me, but my mom and dad are Jenny and Gary. And for me, it was very simple. She was in high school. What is she going to do with the baby? I'm either going to be left with her parents and she's going to want to have the typical teenage, growing up experience, or I just saw it as someone's going to get the short end of the stick. It's either going to be me or her, because she's not equipped to raise a baby. And so I was just very rational about it. She made the best choice she could to make sure I grew up with a mom and a dad. And I never resented her for that. I never felt like Michaela and McKenna or my biological dad's kids were special because they kept them all. I actually joke that in my family, I am the special one because they got to pick me and they just got stuck with the other two.
We have talked to other parents who are adopting, very passionate about adoption. And they are very, very strong on the message that we adopt because we have all been adopted by Jesus. This is not something strange or something that Christians cannot relate to. But we have been adopted by Jesus, and this is why we will adopt. Do you think that, Cari, that you can, maybe in a way that is not better or worse but different, actually relate to God's adoption story because of your own?
Yeah, I definitely think that it's hard to not look at our story and not see God all throughout it. And it's definitely something when I'm in scripture that I feel like it resonates a little deeper with me.
Jumping forward, both your stories, although it's kind of one story as well in one sense, it lends a natural reason why you would both have a heart for a pro-life movement. When did you get to the point where you thought, actually, let's do something together? And did introducing this sort of pro-life cosmetics company, did that change the dynamics of your relationship at all?
Oh yeah, she drives me.
I would probably say in the last 6 or 7 years, Cari and I have been on a journey to figure out what it is we were going to do together. And we covered a lot of things, whether it's how we share our story, where we share our story, who should hear our story. And we went through a lot of things like, are we starting a ministry? Are we pro-life speakers? Like what is God inviting us into? And it was kind of a God moment when we realized that the industry that she's come out of and the industry that I was in for almost 20 years, and we share a love of makeup. I was like, why aren't we doing this? And to be able to provide a company that is pro-life, loves God, loves America, and is conservative and clean and affordable, and we can wrap up the whole entire thing with our story of God's story in ours, then it just felt like a win-win. So we actually set out, and the name was actually different at the beginning, and now it's chapter 3, which the more that it sits with me, chapter 3 is, I just love it so much because one, it offers the opportunity to share, well, what is chapter 3? And I get to say, well, let me tell you about chapter 1 and chapter 2. So it offers the opportunity to always share Jesus, why God loves you, and how God literally can redeem anything. So that's what I love about it, is it just offers an opportunity to always share with somebody who asks.
And then what makes it a pro-life cosmetics company? Other than the founders obviously are pro-life, but...
Yeah. So
Cari?
we give a portion of profits to a couple different ministries. We give to Thrive, which is a crisis pregnancy center that has kind of a revolving baby registry, so that when moms come in and choose life, they are able to give them anything that they need, from the prenatal care all the way to after the baby's born. And so we are able to give monthly to that registry so that these moms have clothes, baby wipes, necessities for them as they are caring for this baby. We also give to Reassemble. It is Victoria's ministry, the abortion recovery retreat. And then we're also looking at a third one as well that is in the sex trafficking realm, that ministry as well. And so we are very, very proud to support these pro-life nonprofits through our profits.
So as we close, I'm going to ask each of you to finish. Shannan, what would you say to any girl, 15 years of age, 16, 17, something like that, who may be listening to this and finds herself in the situation that you found yourself in? What would you say to them?
The first thing that I would say is that this does not define you. This can refine you if you let it. We always take these big moments and try to define them into our identity. I got pregnant. I'm worthless. I'm no good. I'm used goods. And God is in the business of refining. So he will use anything for his glory if we would give it to him. There is more help and resources available to young girls and women facing a crisis than ever before. Crisis pregnancy centers outnumber Planned Parenthood and abortion clinics. I think in America, it's like 12-1. So there is so much love and support for those young girls. And yeah, that would probably be where I would start. I always, I get asked this a lot, and I get a lot of, I usually get moms who are coming to me now that are saying that their young daughters are pregnant. And I always want to get in front of them and get in front of their face and be like, do not let this define you. This is a moment. You made a mistake. We take ownership, but God can use this as part of your story. God can use this, and it can refine you, and it can be an actual catapult for what God has for you next.
Thank you. And Cari, what would you say to this 15, 16, 17-year-old girl who is standing in front of you?
I would tell them that the shame that they're possibly feeling, or the desire to make this go away, it's going to rob them of this moment right now, of the 20 years from now, the 30 years from now. Everybody just thinks about those 9 months. They think about the pregnancy of, you can visibly see that I'm a very young girl and I'm pregnant. They think of that shame, the judgment. And I would tell them to look forward. Think of when you get to look back 20 years from now. you're going to rob yourself of that experience if you try to sweep this under the rug, and to stop thinking about this extremely short-term period of time. And also, just because you choose life does not mean that you have to choose to be the one to raise the baby. I'm definitely a huge advocate for adoption. I think a lot of people think it's either abortion or I have to keep the baby myself. And just quite frankly, children need a mom and a dad. And so if you're going to choose to keep this baby, understand that you have options after you choose life. And I just encourage them to look at that from a perspective of, you want to give this baby the best opportunity it has. It needs a stable mom and dad, but, try to, I think it's very easy to, if you do choose life, to want to keep the baby, especially if they're younger. I think there's also maybe shame with, giving up the baby, or what will the baby think when they find out that I gave them up, and just encouraging them that, God still has a hand in this, and he's not done with the story.
Cari, Shannan, Cari, Shannan, thank you both so much. We've loved having you on, hearing your story. It's a pretty unbelievable one, and just a really inspiring one for people to listen to, people that, like my mum said, maybe are struggling with some of these things right now, are walking a similar journey. What a great picture here of how God can use a really difficult situation if you'll allow him to step into it. And for people listening, again, the links will be in the description box. Go check those out, support what they're doing. I'm sure being a pro-life company, you get some pushback from people about that. So again, go support them, show them some love, encourage them. Again, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Remember, if it inspired you, share it with others so we can see more people engaged in this community.